All right. And now we give our deepest gratitude to everyone that makes the foundation possible, to all of our members, our corporate members, individual members, partner institutions, special partner institutions, all of whom without we would not be here today. The Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation is in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines. We are a nonprofit member-supported organization, and it is only through your generosity and support that we can bring you our sessions every 2 weeks. Thank you so much to everybody who supports the foundation. And if you're joining us this morning, welcome. Good morning. At least where I am, the sun seems to have come out a little bit. But again, we hope wherever you are safe and dry, especially with the coming typhoons here in the Philippines. If you're joining us 2 weeks later through our social media uploads, welcome from wherever in the world you are. Today's topic, as I've mentioned, is an interesting one. But in any case, I won't keep you much longer. I will now ask our chairman, Ernie Ordonez, to please introduce today's speaker. Ernie, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julius. I'm especially happy to introduce our speaker. His name is Raul Raphael Tesoro, but I call him Rafi because the interesting thing is that not only is his topic so fascinating, agriculture to culture, but it's especially important for me because they say the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. Both his parents are fantastically well known. The mother is Patis Tesoro, who's world known for her fashion achievements, and her father, frankly, is one of my very best friends. When I was student council president, he was editor-in-chief of Ateneo, and before that is valedictorian, a top-notch person. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but I'm so glad that he lives in our guest speaker, Rafi Tesoro. Rafi Tesoro, as you may have seen in the background, has a fascinating experience that makes him a Renaissance man from agriculture to culture. And he'll talk some more about this. And I'd like to say that I looked at his resume and he's achieved quite a lot. Some highlights are he has gone from lead designer, director to a farm manager. He's truly a Renaissance man, a fantastic guy. I knew him when he was growing up. Even then, he was fantastic. So anyway, Rafi, welcome to our program. And just 3 requests, which we give the speakers, because as our departed chair said, Ramon, sorry, our job is not just to give information, but to motivate people to use what they learn from these sessions to help the overall objective, which is poverty eradication through more jobs and more livelihood. And of course, your parents have done a lot already, and I'm sure you're continuing the legacy and probably doing more with your fantastic experience. 3 requests. The first request is that since we want people, there are more than 1,400, thanks to the board led by Julius with their global retreat, since 1,400 tune in, separate people, right, every month. Please give your contact number, whether it's office or cell, so they can call you from all over the world and get in touch with you to learn from you and perhaps to spread whatever you're trying to advocate so that more people benefit from your knowledge and experience. So first is phone number. Second, 5 to 10 minutes, and maybe that's in your talk, but 5 to 10 minutes about how you got into this, because we want to develop a personal relationship with you, not just we, but the audience, because we want to know your background and what brought you here. Many very distinguished people don't even touch agriculture. You're extremely distinguished, and you're not only touching it, you're transforming it, right? And the third one in your talk, somewhere in your talk, please tell us how we, the audience, can help spread your advocacy. We're business people, and we use this forum not only to spread the technology, but we use our contacts. Some have contacts with government, banking, etc. And because of this, we're able to leverage our foundation and its contacts to spread the advocacy of our speaker. So on that note, I'd like to say, incidentally, the mother is Patis Tesoro, world known, and the father is Tito Tesoro, valedictorian top lawyer and a dear friend of mine who's gone to heaven ahead of all of us. A fantastic guy. So two fantastic people have produced possibly an even more fantastic person from the background I see and from the nexus you've given from agriculture to culture. On that note, Rafi, great to see you again. And I'm sure your daddy is smiling, laughing in heaven while I, his good friend, am introducing you to 1,400 people around the globe. So, Rafi, so glad to see you. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. And please, you have the floor. Please start with the phone number.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tito Ernie. Yes, we've known each other. You've known me since birth, practically. So it's been good to see you again. Yes. Okay. Well, my name again is Rafi Tesoro, and I am a designer and also the chief strategist for our company, which is a creative think tank called Biogenetics Agri Ventures Incorporated. So this you can reach me actually through my phone number at 0917. Area code +63917 795 6381. Or you can email me at raffytesoro@gmail.com, RAFFYTESORO@gmail.com.
Just to repeat, audience,
Mhm.
his number is +63 or zero if you wish, +63, then 917-795-6381. We find that when you call, we really spread the word, etc. So please, Rafi, go ahead.
So yeah, thank you, Tito Ernie. So a bit of a background. So yes, as Mr. Adonias explained earlier, I have experience in fashion since practically I was born. I was apprenticed by my mother since an early age. So I learned embroidery, beadwork, cutting, everything that you can think of for traditional fashion techniques. But what expanded my worldview and experience into agriculture actually started then as well, because she and my father and their friends, I think Tito Ernie was part of it, put up several foundations. One was the Casa Manila Foundation, which restored one of the first buildings in Intramuros in the late 80s, late 1980s. So it's called Casa Manila. They were responsible with that with Ado Escudero and a bunch of other friends that they had. And that actually brought her journey to create to discovering and rediscovering traditional Filipino dress. So the balotsaya, the terno, the balintawak, the barong. These were discovered by my rediscovered for her artistic use back in those days, and we translated it into a living museum in Casa Manila. Then afterwards, in the early 90s, she and her friends again put up a foundation called the Katutubong Filipino Foundation, where the task of that foundation was to revive dying handicrafts around the Philippines. So we ended up traveling all over the Philippines, finding all sorts of obscure or dying crafts. One of which is piña. So we found piña in a state where there were less than maybe 100 old practitioners, and managed to bring it back to relevance in a space of 4 or 5 years. So that when the foundation was done with it, with of course government and local and private support, and there were around 10,000 weavers active, and we raised production from a few hundred yards a year to tens of thousands of yards a year. So that was great. But even then, there was an agricultural side to it that we saw, but did not actively act upon at the time. And I already saw that was one of the issues, which is of course growing the plant itself. There are very special needs for it. And then we did natural dye. So we brought back the concept of natural dyeing in the Philippines back in the early 90s as well. So Philippine indigo, which used to be one of our main exports in pre-colonial and colonial times, um, and other colors is what we brought back, and some of that is still uh, practiced today in the areas that we sponsored, like in Abra. Uh, Glad to say that that's still alive and well over there. So from there, I ended up running the whole gamut of the creative industries, I would say. production designer. I studied at NYU for that. And then I went into advertising, production design, advertising, and producing as well, where I met a lot of people who helped me in my journey with this. And after that, well, I opened a modeling agency and a few other things. But what it did for me was it gave me a broader exposure to all of the workings in different industries and insights on how they should be actually connected if you want to have an effective system. So this is where we came about with the idea of Biogen. It was me and two other partners who started it. Henry Season, who's actually the owner of Agro Digital, which is a digital platform and aggregation business for produce and fresh vegetables and goods. And Strider, Mark Bantegi is another other partner in that, where he provides the science and experimentation aspect to our work. And we started actually around in the pandemic, when the lockdown happened. Actually, we were amongst ourselves, and this is how we ended up with the company. Was I came up with the idea, why don't we start doing door-to-door direct delivery for fresh food, because nobody had access during that time, especially during the first few weeks. So we started that. I managed to get the first permit actually from the government to be able to transit legally and safely during that time. It was quite a process, but we managed to do it. And we started it by supplying condominiums and villages and contacts. And it was quite successful, to the point that well, everybody basically started doing it as well. So that was interesting. Then after that, we were like, okay, the competition in that system was nascent, I would say. And as most things are in the Philippines, everybody tends to jump into everything when they see that it's working well, but that also becomes a situation in itself. So we took a step back after that, and we thought, this thing requires a proper system. So could we have the presentation for the discussion that I said? But yes, yeah, go ahead.
No, we'll just put your presentation up. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So yeah. So I came up with an idea where, from the benefit of having been able to travel, it is a privilege to be able to travel, but also another privilege to travel with purpose, which is whenever we travel, it was usually under the guise of representing the country, the culture, researching about other cultures and how they manage to do it and such. And I found a very strong link actually between agriculture and culture, as you see here. And it took a while, but I thought we need a long-term strategy to link not just the two, but the entire economy as a whole. Because you have to think of it in this way: everybody sees the end product, but nobody sees the process. And in that light, everybody sees what I call the end industries, which is show business, movie making, advertising, fashion, tech, things like this, retail, restaurants, food. That's all end industries. But nobody sees and wants to participate in the starting industries, the foundation industries, which is agriculture, mining, logistics. So this is a situation, because if you see how other countries bootstrap themselves into success, and we have many examples of that in Asia alone. The first would, in modern times, would be Japan after World War II. It took them close to 40 years after World War II to achieve what we call soft power dominance. So soft power is the ability to transmit and imprint your culture, your ideas to the rest of the world. And I would say Japan has been wildly successful in doing that. I would actually consider them the number two soft power in the world, behind the United States, of course. Uh, and they did that through a lot of trial and error, but because of Japanese discipline and diligence, they made it come to the fore. And the next one to come out with that were the Thais. Uh, I'd like to start with the story of Jim Thompson, actually. So it was when, after the Vietnam War, Jim Thompson, I don't know if you know him, but he is the main proponent of Thai silk. Thailand was not known for silk during the time. So when he put up his business, and then his goal was, I'm going to make silk much better than the Chinese do, and he actually did in some respects, and became famous. So people would come all over the world to Thailand to access his wares. And to put mystery to his brand, take it as you will, good or bad, but it is what it is. He took a walk into a forest one day and never came back. He just mysteriously disappeared into the jungle. So the Thai government, the Thai powers that be, you could say actually the king and queen, took reference to this, and they're like, there's something in here. So why don't we put a guiding hand to this idea of being able to create our own soft power? So what they did was they brought together the best and brightest of Thai culture and science and education and so on and so forth, business, and they said, let us market Thai culture. So they began actually with food. And with that, they created a system where you could modularly create a Thai restaurant anywhere in the world at any time. And they did this by asking the Thai immigrant population if they wanted to set up shop. So most Thais would be like, well, I don't know how to run a restaurant. Well, here the government would be like, well, here's the procedure. How do we design it? Here are 5 set designs. And how do I get the food? Here's the supply chain. Where's the menu? Here's the menu. And I don't have money. We'll subsidize you. See, there's a lot of support behind that. But more importantly, there was a unified direction behind the idea of promoting Thai culture. So at the time, and even until this day, you walk into any Thai restaurant and it's a Thai restaurant. There's a Buddha, there's a palm tree, there are identifying factors behind it. This was planned. This was planned down to every detail. And it gave them the idea that customers would come in and be like, well, Thai food's actually not bad. I wonder what the rest of Thailand is like. So from there, they thought, okay, now we're moving to the next phase. Let's create zones for tourism. That's Phuket. Okay, that's one. Bangkok is, of course, capital. We'll create other places. Let's think of ideas. Let's put up the infrastructure. Let's have better roads, airports, etc. Fast forward to 20 years later, and they are much more successful than we are in terms of quality of life, income, inflation. Yes, they have their own problems, of course, but let's just say that in terms of economics, they're still in a better place than we are, which is interesting because as recently as, say, around the 80s or 90s, they were actually behind the Philippines in terms of GDP, if I'm not mistaken. So the Koreans actually saw that. And you see, the Thais did this in 20 years. The Koreans did it in 10. So it's a matter of studying the predecessors and seeing how they did it. So that's what I'm looking at for the Philippines, actually, is how do we create a soft power situation for the Philippines where we can also promote ourselves and our culture, and also not just monetize it. Yes, of course, everybody needs to profit, but profit with direction where it doesn't just enrich a few, but most. And if you see how the others did it, it's like they identified situations. Can we have the next slide, please? So yes, here, as I explained, we are a think tank. So this is where we thought, okay, we have to create out of the box strategies for this kind of situation, for what I call the grand strategy. Next slide, please. So yeah, well, I get ahead myself from this. Yeah, but the most important thing here is what we're trying to say is with this presentation, this idea is the supply chain is actually key in the Philippines because we have a very fractured supply chain, not just in agriculture and in culture, but across the board. I would say at least 80% of our logistics is done by very small outfits, like one or two trucks, a boat here or there, and there's no communication in the supply chain, which leads to a lot of situations like profiteering and price gouging and hoarding, etc. Next slide, please. So yeah, and this is one of the main reasons that we are held back. We are a nation held back. We have natural resources coming out of our ears. We are one of the biggest gold producers, nickel. Agriculture, we are blessed with extremely fertile soil in a great climate location, in an amazing strategic location globally. But for some reason, we are not working to our advantages. We're not even talking about social advantages like our ability to speak English or the pleasing nature of the Filipino, but it's just even just hard logistical situations. We're not taking advantage of it. And next slide, please. So the solution that we're looking for here is to part of the grand strategy is to create a unified trading and supply chain system where it's not just linear, but all encompassing. And I call it a webway, basically, as we can see in our next slide. Yeah. So it's how do you create the webway? It's basically how do you connect every pertinent sector to each other. When most people talk about the buzzword nowadays in economics and in logistics is circular economies. Yes, all well and good. Oh, fun fact, my major was actually economics. So people are wondering, why does a designer know all this is? Thanks Sanbeda for not giving me my preferred major and putting me in economics instead. So I ended up understanding all of this, but giving the a creative perspective on how to do strategy shifts, basically. So I thought, why not connect everything to each other, not just as a single link in a chain, but as a bound rope, basically. What does that mean? When you create fiber, you're actually twisting thousands and thousands of fibers into itself. And then from that, you create a thread. And that thread is bound again into numbers of threads, and that creates larger things like rope. So we should be able to think in that way. Like in terms of circular economy, everybody says, okay, we should do one for mining, we should do one for manufacturing, but nobody thinks about linking mining to manufacturing. It's strange in this country. They do it in other countries, but here, no, not really. Everybody is very encapsulated in their own sectors at most, at best. At worst, they are even encapsulated within their own business. But no man is an island. So this is our situation in the Philippines. So how do we do that? Next slide, please. So the first one, of course, is to control all supply links. Control is sorry, excuse me, is a strong word, but I'd like to say it's the ability to understand each link in the chain and each chain or each thread in the rope. And then how do we put them all together in order to have that stronger whole? So like say, control the supply link. Let's start with, here, a project that we did was Black Soldier Fly. This is one good example. So we did the studies for Black Soldier Fly starting in around 2015 even. So we were one of the first, even worldwide amongst, yeah. And we managed to industrialize and scale the production of a Black Soldier Fly. What is Black Soldier Fly? Actually, it's a type of wasp where it's a very voracious eater of organic waste. So let's do comparisons. If you do say vermiculture or composting, it takes around 3 to 6 months to convert 1 kilo of organic waste into soil or soil products. With black soldier fly on its standard cycle, it takes only 6 weeks to convert the same amount. What we did was we created an industrial system where you can use the soldier fly's life cycles, cycle it in a certain way, think like whiskey, and now you can do an organic waste disposal on a daily basis, because this is one of the greatest barriers to organic waste disposal is it takes time, whereas the production of waste is on a daily basis. So there's a clear disconnect between the two, and nobody wanted to figure out how to clear up the disconnect. And we thought, well, we should do it this way. And we did. We proved it. Actually, we were outputting around 500 kilos of black soldier fly larvae a day already, and we were converting over a ton of, in the case of our test facility, chicken waste. But this can eat anything organic. So we were removing 1 ton of chicken waste a day from the disposal system and converting it into actually useful products. So black soldier flies would produce 3 products out of that. One would be the larvae itself, which can be used as a organic replacement for feed components for animals, especially for protein. So instead of say using soya, which we import most of our soya, we can use black soldier flies instead. And then the frass or the insect poop is actually one of the best soil conditioners and fertilizers that you can find. That's another product that you can use, and you can use that in lieu of synthetic fertilizers. And then the third one would be chitin, which is used in pharmaceutical and beauty industries. Then we're like, okay, so how do we sell it? Nobody wanted to. The thing here in the Philippines is nobody wants to take what I say the first dance. In business sense here is I want somebody to do it first, and I want to see them fail. But if they don't fail and they do it well, I'm going to copy it. This is how we work do business here. I'm just speaking frankly from experience. But that destroys innovation. That destroys change and progress, because nobody wants to change unless the change is proven. But the thing with change is you can't prove it until it is proven. But this is one social mindset that we need to change. So, okay, when we thought about that, nobody wants to buy it because nobody wants to take the chance. So we went into contract farming. This is where we ended up with a partnership with Philippine Transmarine, one of the largest manpower management agencies in the country. So they created a rice security program for their employees, where we would contract grow rice with farmers. So the benefit would actually be directly to the farmers because they would have a larger share of the farm gate. There were no middlemen involved. Then this would go straight to the mill. And from there, the product would be shipped to the offices of PTC, Philippine Transmarine. And they offered their employees a 1,000 peso monthly rice allowance, which is either convertible cash or you can have it as rice. Most actually opted for rice because common sense is you could get 1,000 pesos and you could spend it on other things, but the price of rice is your situation, and the availability of rice is your second situation in the Philippines, because the swings are extremely wild in terms of pricing, and you can't always get the product you get. That's part of the larger problem here in the Philippines. So with this, we have managed to secure a sure market for the product, which is rice. And that means sure sales for both the mill and the farmer, which now releases the farmer from the anxiety of having to sell. Because we found that there were several situations with the farmer, it wasn't just their harvest volumes or their yields were not just dependent on the weather or improvements, but also on their mindset. A lot of them would be like, I'll just sell whatever I can. I can grill whatever I can. And best of luck. So they wouldn't exert their best effort into growing. They would exert their best effort into surviving. They wouldn't think about, okay, I will do higher yields or higher profit. They were thinking, I need to sell this, whatever I can sell, as quickly as possible in order to eat the next day. So this releases them from that cycle. There's a cycle of debt in the Philippines where the middlemen or the VIHs were often vilified, and some rightly so because of their practices, but not all, I would say. But still, there is enough that, for example, they create a cycle of debt where they provide the seeds and seed money, literally, to the farmers, but in exchange, the farmers must give them the product at a advantageous price to the agent, basically. So of course, a farmer doesn't make money. So how we circumvented that was we removed all of the middlemen, and then now we created a market for the organic fertilizers where we would be able to test them as well, and then be able to provide the data later on in order to get the licensing and permits and whatever else to be able to make this a viable large scale product. Then, so you can see we created an entire chain incubated within one company where the consumer is assured of his supply, the producer is assured of a sale, and because we have control over the entire supply link, we've been able to bring down the price of of the product. So what we're growing is a type of premium rice. I forget the number. My Henry would know more. Which would retail in the open market at around 80 to 90 pesos. And right now, Philippine Transmarine is providing it to their employees at 65. And because we've been able to work with the farmer well, the farmers have actually been able to double their yield without having to invest in additional infrastructure or irrigation or water, which we also have plans for. So the national average and for rice is around 5 metric tons per hectare. We've been able to raise it around 11 to 14 on some of our farms recently. And the benefit of that is, of course, it lowers the cost of the product, which is then passed on, hopefully, later on to the consumer. Which goes to the next set, which is create clear lines of communication. The problem with the supply chain here is that nobody talks. Nobody wants to talk. So everything is a mystery. How the prices came to be, why the product is like this, where did it come from? Nobody knows. There's no provenance. There's no idea on how much, why the money is made, and so on and so forth. So this creates a lot of profiteering and hoarding and all sorts of foul play. But that damages the economy because we cannot provide basic goods at a competitive price to the country, basically. So if you go to like Thailand, onions are like 20 pesos for a kilo or something to that effect, whereas here it's 100, 120. It reached 700 in December 2022. It got to the point where I had onions and I had showbiz friends wanting to come to my warehouse to take photos of themselves with it and post it on Instagram because it was gold, like suddenly owning an onion was a status symbol. It was ridiculous. So the Biogen envisions a body where we have the ability to see how the transactions work from point A to point Z and ideate how to be able not to control the prices, of course, but to find efficiencies on how to keep pricing stable and competitive. Right. So that's where we have to ensure transparency and create clear lines. Then the last one is provide complete design direction. What is that? This is where the culture aspect comes in. As with the Thai story, it's like, so let's take for an example. Right now, Philippine culture is under the microscope again on a global level. People are interested in our food, in our fabrics, in our designs, in all of this, but there is no clear direction on where it's headed. There's no clear direction on where it even comes from. We can't even decide amongst ourselves what is the best adobo. And where people like to say, "Oh, there's no such thing because every province has their own technique," blah blah blah. I have to say this: we have been living with tribal lines for so long that it needs to dissolve. Yes, we were not a nation before the Spanish came. We were not a nation like we are now, but we are a nation now. So we have to decide what is our identity as a Filipino to the world. We should stop bickering amongst ourselves about our identity to ourselves because we know what we are, flaws and all. We just don't want to accept it because my notion of identity on a tribal line is different from another Filipino. That's their situation. This needs to go. Look at what the Thais did. They got their best minds together, and let's say for culinary, and they created all the regional dishes, but they only chose one dish here and there to represent Thai culture as a whole. Because to the outside world, they don't care. They have no idea. They don't know what we're fighting about. And if they see that the first thing they experience is a fight, then it's not pleasant for them. Why would they come here? Why would they want to experience our food? This sort of situation. So we have to create that situation where the design direction influences from the very start. Let's say you go to any Thai restaurant in the world, no matter how bad it is, there is a barest expectation that it tastes like Thai food because the Thais have standardized the processes of their ingredients. So when you get a Thai red curry, it comes in a can, sure, but minimum expectation it will taste like a Thai red curry. That is the achievement that they have done. The Koreans have done the same with their kimchi. The Japanese have done it with their entire cuisine. These are fine examples of that. We need to do something like that for ourselves. Same thing goes with textile, with our how we make movies, how we do music. We have to find not just our flavor, but to stick to it. And then that's what we tell everybody. Now, if they want to learn more, that's when they come here. That's the idea. You have to hook them first. We're not hooking them. So Biogen's idea is how do we create this entire thing, which is in the next slide. So yeah, here, I explained this more or less, but in detail. So establishing resource capture, like I said, a whirlpool economy, which I will discuss more at length in the next slide. Contract farming, processing and logistics, which is key because we have a very fractured logistics chain here. It's very expensive. And marketing, like how do we decide to sell this? Who do we sell it to? How do we sell it? How does it get there? What are the barriers? These are things that we have to overcome and understand. Overseer capability is that like we have to form a guiding body or a set of guiding bodies, or we have to talk basically and be agreeable to everybody knowing what the other person is more or less doing. We don't need to know your business in detail. We just need to know that you're fair. That's it. Transparency is fairness. And that's part of the overseer capability that we're trying to achieve with Biogen's grand strategy. Next slide, please. Yeah. So how do we do that in a bit of detail? So first is lateral linking. So we find, let's take agriculture. Then we find what works with it on the same level. So let's say one person is growing corn. Most of the time, when they process the corn and it goes to the feed mill, the husks and the stems, they're either burned or used as fertilizer or fed to livestock. But that's all like thrown up in the air. Whoever gets it, hope you get it. Maybe you won't. If you do a lateral link, meaning you already talked to, say, a dairy farm or a textile factory where your waste or your byproducts can already be pre-sold or pre-ordered before harvest, even, as long as you know that whatever is there is there with proper understandings, like force majeure and all of that. But across the board, people should start talking to each other. Like, I need this. Do you have this? Yes, I do. Okay, then let's talk. That's what Biogen is building right now, with a trade hub system where the trade hub, which actually AgroDigital functions as in a way right now, where the buyer and seller can both get together on a platform and exchange notes and be able to come to a deal where before things are out, especially in agriculture, it's already spoken for as much as possible, because the biggest enemy in agriculture is time. It takes a long time to grow, but very fast for it to rot. And that's our other situation with the Philippines. There's no cold chain here. So we've also established a way to create a I call a floor to door cold chain system, where whatever comes from the soil goes immediately into a refrigerator, and it never leaves 4 degrees, let's say for fresh produce, all the way until it reaches the doorstep of your consumer. So we even through our partnership with PTC, we're actually bringing in rider boxes that are refrigerated, not insulated. These have actual refrigeration units in the back, 75 liters, so around 3 by 2 feet, good enough to fit in the back of a motorcycle. So that way we can actually, ideally, say, pick strawberries in Benguet, wash them in the farm, put it immediately into its packaging, stick it into the refrigeration units. They go into cold chambers after that. Then it gets into the riders. It never leaves 4 degrees. That way you can reduce spoilage in the Philippines from anywhere from 30 to 80%, depending on the type of produce here. That's our spoilage rate. We can reduce that to around 5%, 5 to 10%, which is more to the international standard. What was that do? That brings down prices immensely, because right now the consumer is not just paying for the price of this vegetable, for example, like say broccoli. Broccoli in Benguet is anywhere between 20 to 80 pesos, depending on the season. But in Manila, it goes from 500 to 700 a kilo, which is insane. Why is there a 600% markup? Because the consumer is paying not just for that 1 kilo of broccoli, but for the 5 kilos that were lost along the way. So this is how you laterally link. So you're linking agriculture, but also the logistics on a lateral wave. Vertical stacking is the second one. Sorry, I put the wrong numbers in that. But basically, vertical stacking is how do you add on to those businesses. So by determining which businesses work well with each other on a stack. So let's say you're growing tilapia. If you create an aquaponics system, you can actually use one feed system for the tilapia, but you're also growing snails, shrimp, crawfish, duckweed, all in an enclosed system. So that's a vertical stack right there. And then you can even go further beyond that by say, okay, I either become a seafood aggregator or I open a seafood restaurant. So there are some stories like that that are very successful. Like I think Antonio's grows their own food, or was it? There's a restaurant in Baguio. I think it's called Good Earth or something like that. But they're always full because their food is so cheap. It's okay, but it's really cheap. And the reason for that is they have their own farms. So they get all of their vegetables from their own farm. So that's a one way to stack. So from there, you can do the whirlpool economy. What is that? So now you can start linking all of the different sectors together. There's much more detail to this. I'm just giving as much of a explanation as I can on how this can work. So the whirlpool economics is think of how the anatomy of a whirlpool works. It has a central line that pulls everything down. And then it has, the whirlpool effect is what pulls everything down. So that swirl is what pulls everything down. But there is a centrifugal line in the middle that pulls everything up. And in between, you have turbulence that pulls everything from the sides down in. What does that mean? The supply chain is what's in the middle. You should push all goods and services upwards. But you should also link each circle into the whirlpool. So now they spiral into each other. So the base industries feed the end industries, but everything along the way, manufacturing and processing, logistics, services, banking, etc., all the way to the end industries. But then the end industries create the products and services that would benefit everything down the chain from there. They bring it back down to them. So let's take the farmer situation again. Most of the supply chain providers here don't have what we call a backload. So they ship something somewhere, the truck comes back empty. That's where you can bring in the whirlpool economy idea, where you have an idea what the backload is. So let's take black soldier flies as an example, with farming, with logistics, with, say, a fertilizer provider and a agricultural inputs and equipment provider, all the way to the top. So farmer gives it to the trade hub goes and sells it to the end market, but the trade hub is also collating all of the goods and services necessary for a backload to the farmer, to the, like, say, fertilizer, that goes to the farmer. Agricultural inputs, seeds, can go to the farmer, equipment. But see, we've pushed things up, and this will actually drop your logistics costs by 30 to 50%, just because you're not transporting air. That's a very simplified version of when I say with the whirlpool economy. Then resource capture is the most important thing also. So with the likes of, say, black soldier flies, vermiculture, but also plastics recycling, metals, and etc. You have to combine the recycling aspect of it by pulling from each sector. So that's also part of what we can use with as the backload, barring, of course, health and other permit situations, which we will have to work on. But the main idea here is every link in the chain, every circle in the whirlpool creates waste. Instead of having to create new materials to feed the supply chain, why don't we bring back their waste and process it on site to be brought back into the supply chain at a cheaper cost? So that's the idea of the whirlpool economy as a whole. Now, to weave the webway, number 4, right? That's when you put all of the different ideas that Biogen has: supply chain, trade hubs, end market, ideation, advertising and marketing, cultural soft power ideas. You have to trace the lines between all of that. Basically grow the neuron links between them so that they can start activating with each other and creating an entirely new economic system for the Philippines, where it's not fractured, it's not unsystematic, it's not corrupt. I have personal experience on how corrupt the system is here. And do I fault them? No, because it's just the way things have been done here for a long time. But it also means it needs to change, because the systems now, it's no longer sustainable. We have abused the richness of this country for so long that it no longer has the capacity to give more. The supply system in the Philippines will collapse sooner or later, as we experienced a bit of it during quarantine, when trucks couldn't come in. People from all walks of life were asking me for food because they knew I was one of the few who could actually bring it in for the first few weeks. And it didn't matter who they were. They were owners of big companies. They were captains of industry. They were art, showbiz artists, and all of this. People who had all the trappings of power and influence, but all of us will be brought humbly down by the lack of food and clothing and the basics, basically. So that's what we're trying to avoid. But the biggest idea here is, if we're going to change the system, why don't we already enact a design for the system so that it changes towards that direction already, instead of being reactionary to how we affect change? Why don't we be visionary about it? So what we did with, as an example of that, what we did with, say, the likes of Philippine Transmarines or RICE program, or what our work with the Isabel Foundation or the Mahalina Foundation with Dr. Patricia Arneta and Mercedes Isabel, is you can take the farmer. Let's take the farmer again as an example, because we're talking about agriculture. Your farmer will not farm for several reasons, not just because of the harvest, the corrupt system, etc., but also because of his family. And also on the flip side, the cultural worker has the same situation. They will not work because of several situations with their family. So why don't you give their families, all of them, work? And how do you use culture and agriculture to do that? Farmer can farm, not a problem. wife, the children can either choose to farm or learn a cultural trade skill like weaving, basketry, carpentry, tailoring, etc., etc., and then use the byproducts of agriculture to create it. This provides several benefits because now the entire family is employed, has the ability to not just provide for themselves, but also to others. They create additional products and services that reinforce the main product or the basic product. So you can see in other cultures that we're growing rice, and then they make baskets out of the rice stalks, and then they sell the rice in the baskets, lock, stock, and barrel, and then suddenly the price of that rice is 4 or 5 times higher because you created a story and then you showed additional effort and an idea of a culture behind it. And people love that. Everybody who has means would want to buy into that because civilization, humanity is not just about surviving, it's about growing, it's about experiencing. We love to experience other people's experiences. So that's the idea behind the entire system of Biogen. So do I have another slide? If I'm not mistaken. All right. I think that's it.
Sir, this is the end of your slide now,
Yeah.
sir.
I knew that's it. Sorry, I'm so into it, but yeah. So that's the main idea of what Biogen is thinking. So that's agriculture to culture. How do you make rice to nice? Is we have to start thinking of how to create basic products, but also with end products, and culture and services in mind. And yeah, with that, I hope everybody enjoyed the idea, and I hope we can talk about it some more.
All right. Thanks very much for that, Rafi. It's interesting that you're linking agriculture to the idea of sort of using it as a way to develop soft power. And I think that a lot of these sort of ways that we might be able to use the raw materials to develop more, let's say, more culturally relevant, I think, products or services, I think is something that's worth. That's really something that a lot of countries have done very, very, very well. But we've also seen some countries do it fairly poorly. But I think that's something that's very, very interesting for us to look at. All right. So thank you very much for that presentation, Rafi. I think discussing how agriculture can support cultural development, especially when you're trying to create culturally relevant or culturally significant products and services, it's a tall order. I think a lot of countries, I guess success stories, you've mentioned Thailand, for example, or Japan. There are countries that are very, very successful in sort of creating this kind of image and use the term soft power. Korea has been wildly successful in exporting. I might be identifying my age here. The Hallyu wave, I think, is I think now it's different. It comes and it goes and things like that. So I think that exportation of soft power is an interesting avenue to explore. I think maybe we have time for I think one question before we move on to the informal session. Would anybody like to come in?
Yes, may I
Maybe
ask
Ernie,
a
you'd like
question?
something?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Ernie. Yeah, please come in.
Yes. I like to ask this question because it is very germane to the talk we just had. You mentioned, Mr. President, about Thailand have its own characteristic food, and Rafi has linked agriculture and food to culture. There's a new law that came up called Tatak Pinoy, and the Tatak Pinoy is supposed to be along this trend. However, they kind of lack substance. They kind of like to know what they're gonna do with the Tatak Pinoy. I'd like to ask Rafi 2 questions. First of all, how does this relate to your advocacy? And second of all, whom have you talked to? Because we can connect you to people who are into this and are hungry for your ideas. So first of all, how do you connect Tatak Pinoy to what you're saying? And secondly, whom have you talked to so we can add to your contacts and perhaps make the light shine faster and brighter? Thank you.
for the first, the Tak Pinoy, yes, I've heard about it. I have not talked to anybody at length about it. I was going to work towards it by showing the progress that we've done so far and build from there, because it's a matter of monkey see, monkey do in this country. So uh, I've had some talks with some people, but nothing substantial yet because we're so busy working on the basics. That's the first situation here. And the problem with, say, these are good movements. Like there's the creative industries movement, which became a law, and then it's now an initiative with its own funding from the government. And now Tatak Pinoy, yes, these are also great. But the biggest problem here that I see, the biggest situation, is you have to understand how the other countries did it. And the first thing that they did is the first thing that they have that we don't is they have a guiding, what I call a guiding hand principle. So you need a body, an entity, or even a person who encompasses time. Political time is what I'm talking about. So because most terms, most politicians have terms, but a king and queen does not. So if you look at these countries, they have that. Japan has an emperor, the Thais have the king and queen. Korea does not, but they have the chaibols, and their interest spans generations. With that, you have that kind of directionality that surpasses term limits. Because right now everything's short term. Okay, I'm putting something down. I only have 3 years. This is as much time as I got. So that's. But if you're thinking 10 years, 20 years, this is how you realize the idea. So to take things like, say, Tatak Pinoy, yes, they want to put a stamp on it, but what is the identity of it is the first question, and that alone takes years to unwind. And I keep telling people, like when they had the adobo discussion last year, like which is the best adobo in the Philippines, and everybody was fighting about it. I said, you guys shouldn't be fighting about the adobo because you can't standardize the adobo because they wanted to standardize it as the Thais did with their cuisine. You have to standardize the soy sauce first. Is what I said. That's how basic the movement has to be. Like if you look at how the Thais did it, there's one maker of sriracha sauce, the biggest guy. That 90% of all sriracha sauce is made by one company. That determines the flavor of Thailand. If you want to discover other sriracha sauces, go to Thailand. That's your idea. That's how it came out to be. But for us, even the same manufacturer will come out with different batches of the same soy sauce because they cannot reliably get the same supply from the same supplier. That's their biggest problem. So, and because region, climate, soil changes the taste of the ingredient, how do you standardize soy sauce when you can't have reliable standardization or consistency from the same suppliers? That's the first step that you have to take. That's why my talk was mostly about agriculture, because we have an answer to culture. Everybody's been trying to answer culture, but nobody's been answering how to provide for culture. So that's where we go with that.
It's not a question, just an offer. Our foundation, led by President Julius, is now quite willing to bring you to the decision makers of the Pinoy, and they're right now grappling with what it is and what it can be. And like your parents, you're totally brilliant. We want to bring you there, and you can give them while it's growing, so that the seed which your parents planted in you will then grow with this Tatak Pinoy. So, Mr. Julius, I'd like to say that we want to make an appointment with him, with the top decision makers in this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for that. And I think, well, for those of you, I'm sure you have some questions. We'll address those in our informal session, which is coming up. But unfortunately, if you are joining us through our social media uploads 2 weeks later, this is the extent of what you can get free of charge. As I've mentioned, the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation is a nonprofit member-supported organization. And it is only through the support and generosity of our members that we're able to bring you what we do. We can bring you all of these sessions every 2 weeks for free, but if you'd like to get more out of it, join us for informal sessions, engage with the speaker, engage with the other members of the organization, and gain access to our wide network of agribusinesses and countryside development organizations. Consider joining us as a member. If you are working in this interesting realm of agriculture and cultural significance, if you're somebody who's trying to find ways to develop or bring attention to perhaps some kind of culturally significant or historically significant product or service that's rooted in the agricultural industry of your country or the agricultural history of your country, this is a very interesting and very broad, I think, what you call this topic to discuss. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a comment down below. We invite you to like and subscribe to our YouTube or to our Facebook channels. Yeah, we hope to hear from you. Anyway, for now, let us give our certificate of appreciation to Rafi. Can we flash that on screen? So the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation, in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines, together with all of our members, our partner institutions, senior special partner institutions, corporate members, and individual members, all present the certificate of appreciation to Rafi Tesoro for his invaluable support in advocacy and promotion of agribusiness and countryside development, and for his commendable and unselfish services rendered to this foundation as our resource speaker on our 25th online meeting of 2024, given this 12th day of November in Pasig City, Philippines. Signed, Ernie Ordonez as our chairman and myself as our president. Our next topic, it is going to be in aquaculture, particularly in tilapia farming. So we hope that's something that will be of interest to you. Do keep yourselves posted on our social media. We'll be putting out our announcement on that session soon. Okay, but again, as I mentioned, if you are joining us right now for our, you're joining us live right now, please do stay on for our informal session after this. But if you are joining us 2 weeks later through our social media uploads, once again, unfortunately, we have to bid you goodbye until the next session. Once again, the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation is in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines, and we are a member-supported nonprofit organization. If today's session has brought you any value, if you'd like to join us for our informal sessions, you'd like to talk to the speaker, you'd like to gain access to our wide network of members engaged in agribusinesses and countryside development here in the Philippines, do consider joining us as a member. We rely on your support and generosity to keep the foundation running and bring you these sessions every 2 weeks. And we hope that you will contribute to our cause. In any case, we hope to see you again for our next session. Have a great day wherever in the world you are. Bye-bye.